Hello everyone, welcome to Semiconductor Fundamentals lecture series session number 1. Today we are going to analyze various semiconductor materials and their properties. So let us start. So we have over here silicon, gallium arsenide and germanium. Okay, so silicon and germanium belong to elemental semiconductor materials. Okay, so over here silicon and germanium belong to elemental semiconductors. They are elemental semiconductors. Okay, whereas gallium arsenide is a compound semiconductor. Okay, elemental semiconductors and compound semiconductor. Okay, their properties are different. Now, how many atoms of silicon are present per cubic meter? Okay, so per centimeter cube, that means per centimeter cube means volume, right? So how many silicon atoms are present per centimeter cube? Okay, so there are around 5 into 10 raised to 22 silicon atoms present per centimeter cube. Okay, for gallium arsenide it is slightly less, more or less same, and for germanium also it's more or less same. Now about the crystal structure, silicon and germanium has diamond crystal structure and gallium arsenide has zinc blende crystal structure. Now lattice constant, the distance between the two silicon atoms is my lattice constant. So let's say that our silicon atoms are placed over here. One is over here. Let me just maximize it. Okay, so one is over here. Size I'll select a little bigger. So one is over here. Okay, and one is over here, let's say. So what's the distance between the two silicon atoms? That's my lattice constant. Okay, and its unit is angstroms. Now 1 angstrom is actually given by, let me just write, where is the, yeah, okay. So 1 angstrom is given by 1 angstrom is equal to 10 raised to minus 8. 1 10 raised to minus 8 centimeter. So that's the unit conversion. Okay, 1 angstrom unit is 1 into 10 raised to minus 8, 10 raised to minus 8 centimeters. Okay, so the lattice constant for silicon it's around 5.43 angstroms, and for gallium arsenide and germanium it's 5.65. Now, perhaps this is the reason why silicon is more famous than germanium, because of its higher melting point. So the melting point of silicon is the highest among the three. It is 1415 degrees Celsius. Next is gallium arsenide around 1200, and germanium it's around 937 degrees Celsius. Now, the dielectric constant. This is also one of the important properties. The dielectric constant for silicon, okay, it's around 11.7. For gallium arsenide it's 13.1, and for germanium it's 16. Then the band gap energy. Now what is the band gap energy? Let me just see that if I can show it to you. Okay, so let's say you okay, fine, let me just go back and select shapes, lines. Yeah, so let's say you have your conduction band. Let me just, yeah. So the distance between the conduction band and the valence band is my energy band gap. So let's say uh, this is my conduction band. Let me write. So this is my conduction band EC, and this is my valence band. Okay, I hope that you know what is a conduction and a valence band. The difference between them is my energy band gap. Okay, so this distance over here. This distance over here is Eg. Okay, this is okay. Just wait a sec. This distance over here is the energy band gap. Okay, Eg, which is around this also plays a major role. This is around 1.12 electron volt for silicon. It's around 1.42 for gallium arsenide and 0.66 electron volt for germanium. It's also important. Now, what do you mean by 1 electron volt? 1 electron volt. It's energy, right? So 1 electron volts means 1 into 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19. So I can write 1 e minus 19. So this is the energy. Actually, when we multiply it by electron volt, this means this is the energy. So this is the amount of energy, band gap energy. That is the difference between the distance between the conduction band and the valence band is my band gap energy. And this is the amount of energy. Okay, 1 electron volt. So around 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19 electron. This is in electron volt. Okay, if I want to convert it into voltage, I have to divide it by E. E is my charge on the electron, basically. Okay, electronic energy, E. So next is the electron affinity. Okay, there is one more level over here, that is vacuum level. Let me show it over here. It is somewhere around here. Okay, and this is called as, okay, this is E naught, denoted by E naught, vacuum or free energy space. So this distance over here, if you see this distance over here, from here, this distance over here is my electron affinity. This is denoted like this. Okay, this is okay, this is my electron affinity. Okay, and this is given in volts, but if you want to represent in terms of, these are the energies, right? So it will be 4.01 electron volt in terms of energies. Okay, so this distance is around 1.1, and this distance will be 4 times. So as you can see, the distance between the conduction band and the free energy space level will be around 4 times more than the Eg level, that is the energy band gap. Okay, so this is my electron affinity, and its value is around, it's measured in volts, but if you want to plot it in the energy band diagram, we have to write it as 4.01 electron volt. Okay, I hope this is fine. Now, yeah, so it's around same in all the three materials. Now, intrinsic carrier concentration, Ni. Ni is denoted by Ni unit is per centimeter cube. Okay, intrinsic carrier concentration is denoted by Ni. So for intrinsic semiconductor, the number of electrons and holes are same, and that carrier concentration is called as Ni. So it's around 1.5 into 10 raised to 10 per centimeter cube. It's a very important number to remember. It is mostly utilized in numericals. For gallium arsenide, it's less. It's around 1.8 into 10 raised to 6 per centimeter cube. And for germanium, it's higher. Ni is 10 raised to in the order of 10 raised to 13. Next is the mobility. So mobility is unit is centimeter square upon volt second. And for electrons and holes, the mobility is different. Okay, so for electron mobility is denoted by mu n, and the hole mobility is denoted by mu p. And as you can see, the electron mobility is a little higher compared to the hole mobility. It's around almost like 2.5 times higher, correct? So it's around 1350 divided by around, if you want to see the exact number, you have to divide 1350 by 480. Okay, so that will give you how many times the mobility is higher in the terms of electrons. Okay, and for germanium, it's quite high. It's almost 3 times the mobility of electrons. It's around 3900, and the mobility of holes is also higher, 1900 centimeter square per volt second. Well, for gallium arsenide, the value of mobility is tremendously high compared to the silicon and germanium. So for gallium arsenide, its value is around 8500. Okay, and the whole mobility is very less, as you can see, 400 centimeter square per volt second. Okay, now since the electron mobility is so high, that is one of the reasons why gallium arsenide material is used for making devices which are suited for very high frequency, or it is also suited for very high speed applications, because mobility is the ease of movement of electrons into the crystal. So in a silicon crystal, we have lot of other charge carriers which are there, other particles which are there inside. We have electrons, holes, ionized carriers, immobile ions. Then we have you know photons, phonons. So there are a lot of particles inside the silicon crystal. So just to give you an example, if you are traveling in a train which is not crowded at all, you can easily move in the train compartment. Okay, so your train compartment is a silicon crystal, let's say, and you are the atom, silicon atom. So you are you are the electron, let's say. Okay, you are the electron, and your ease of movement when the train compartment is empty, it's very very easy. You can move around easily. Okay, and similarly, during the peak times, it's very difficult even to get into the train. It's very, your mobility is restricted. Okay, so mobility is that ease of movement of charge particles, correct? So it's around you know higher for electrons over here, as you can see, and for holes it's comparatively lesser. Then in the subject of basic electronic circuits, our devices which will be focusing will be PN junction, BJT, JFET, MOS junction, and MOSFET. Okay, so we will start that in a bit. So these were all the properties of silicon, gallium arsenide, and germanium, which are very very important. So I've listed down only the important properties. There are many more properties which can be covered over here. Okay, so let's focus our attention to the devices which we are going to analyze or study in detail in basic electronic circuits. So first is the first is the PN junction diode, basically. So in a PN junction diode, it has two terminals, anode and a cathode, and it's a unidirectional device, semiconductor device, unidirectional semiconductor device. That means the current will always flow from anode to cathode, not the other way around. Okay, it will block the current flow in the other direction. So PN junction has very wide range of applications. It can be used as a clipper circuits and clamper circuits, and as a Zener diode it can be used as a voltage regulator. So it has a lot of applications. Also it can be used as a diode in rectifier circuits. Okay, so it has a lot of applications. Then we'll move on to BJT. That will be uh, bipolar junction transistor. There will be two types of BJT which we'll be studying. Let me come back over here. Okay, so two types of BJT which we are going to study will be NPN and PNP. Okay, this will be a focus. So here I have shown the structure for PNP transistor. It has three terminals: emitter, base, collector. Okay, so since there are PNP, there are two junctions. Okay, so over here this is a current control device. So we'll see in detail how this works as a current control device. That means the output current is controlled by the input current. Okay, so that is what the fundamental principle of bipolar junction transistor. And your current flow is due to both minority as well as majority carriers. Okay, so in semiconductors there is a concept of majority and minority carriers. Okay, so we'll study that in brief. Then we'll also study BJT DC circuits, that is biasing circuit, how to turn on the BJT in a particular region, And yeah, and we'll also study BJT as amplifier. Okay, BJT has also wide applications. Then we'll come on to the JFET, that will be junction field effect transistor. It's a voltage control device. Okay, and also made up of semiconductor material. It has three terminals as shown over here: source, drain, and gate. Okay, so the conductivity of the channel can be controlled by controlling the amount of voltage. Okay, and hence we can control the amount of conductivity and hence the current over here. So junction field effect transistor, we will study its working principle, its construction, then the DC and the AC analysis followed by. Okay, compared to the MOSFET and JFET, MOSFET is more important, but fundamentally you should understand the operating principle of JFET also, because that will help you to understand the field effect transistor. Now, next comes the MOS junction. Actually, next device is MOSFET. But before study MOSFET, we should understand what is a metal oxide semiconductor junction. Okay, as you can see, there are two terminals over here: gate and body. Body can also be called as substrate. So it is a metal electrode. It can be aluminum or polysilicon. Then we have an insulator over here, oxide layer, SiO2, and then we have a p-type semiconductor. We have shown over here p-type. It can be n-type also. So here we will start, I mean, you should know the basic functionality of a MOS junction. So if you understand the basics of MOS junction, it will be very easy to understand the MOSFET. Okay, so no DC current flows in this, obviously, because you have an oxide layer present. So there won't be any DC current flow. There is no IV characteristics for a MOS junction. Particularly, they study about the capacitor versus voltage relation for a MOS junction. And why does the current does not flow? Because of the SiO2 insulator. Okay, and finally, if you just add two more terminals, that is two regions, n plus regions to the MOS junction, it becomes a MOSFET. So MOSFET is metal oxide semiconductor field effect transistor. It's a voltage control device like JFET. Okay, it's the most important semiconductor device as you can see in today's era. So it has gate, body, drain, and source. Okay, we already talked about metal oxide and semiconductor. Now we add over here and two n plus regions, and within them we have a channel formed. Okay, we have a p-type substrate, so the surface will be inverted and an n channel will be formed between these two regions. So because in a MOS junction current cannot flow in the x direction, but over here the current flow is possible between the source and drain. Okay, again it is a voltage control device. We will study how the gate to source voltage and drain to source voltage controls the amount of current flow in a MOSFET. So there are two types of MOSFET: NMOS, which is a N-channel MOSFET. So the structure seen over here is a NMOS, N-channel MOSFET, and we have P-channel MOSFET also. Okay, and these, whenever we can combine those two also, whenever we have a NMOS and a PMOS together in a device, we call it as a CMOS, which is also extremely important device. CMOS, complementary MOS field effect transistor. Okay, so now let's in next 1 minute we will see why MOSFET is so important. Okay, so the importance of MOSFET, just to give you some numbers, 1 million means one around 10 lakh. Okay, so let's compare Intel processors. So this was the first microcontroller invented in the year 1971. The technology used was PMOS technology, and the manufacturing technology was 10 micrometer. So in a MOSFET, we have channel length. Okay, the distance between the N plus and the the length of the channel, N channel over here is the manufacturing technology uh, length. This is the 10 micrometer means what? That only. L, channel length. Okay, so just to give you some comparison, a single hair strand, it's around 100 micrometer, 100 microns. As you can see, this length of the channel of a MOSFET is around 10 times smaller than a single hair strand. Okay, so as you can see how small it can be. And those Intel processor 4004, which was the first one, used around 2300 transistors with giving a clock speed very less. It's around 108 kilohertz. Okay, at that time it was considered to be very high. Okay, and with the advancement of technology, Intel has matured its processors, and in the year 1993, it has come up with Intel Pentium processor with the clock frequency of 66 megahertz and a whooping 3.1 million transistors. Okay, around 31 lakh transistors inside, with the channel length as small as zero point 0.1 micrometer. Now, as you can see, since the channel length is so small, the device will be very, very small. That's why you can fit so many of them in a small space. Okay, so these are all made up of MOSFET. Okay, the technology used over here was by CMOS. So they were using BJT as well as CMOS technology. Then Intel Pentium 4 processors, which was very famous. It lasted very long, and it has a clock frequency of 1.5 gigahertz. It came in the year 2000, and it has reduced channel length. It's around 0.18 micrometer now, but it increased the transistors. So here the transistors were 42 million. Okay, 42 million transistors inside Intel Pentium 4 processor. Okay, and it used CMOS technology, just I was talking about. CMOS is a combination of NMOS and PMOS. So as you can see, so many transistors, combination of NMOS and PMOS were working together to give you the processing power of Intel Pentium 4. Then in the year 2008, Intel Core 2 Duo processor came with 410 million transistors, and for the first time from micrometer we have moved into nanometer era. Okay, so it was around 45 nanometer. The channel length, in a MOSFET has reached 45 nanometer. Nanometer is 10 raised to minus 9, meters. So in the year 2008, again the technology was CMOS technology. Then came the very high end Intel Core i7 second generation. Here there were around 11 generations, from first generation to 11th generation. So I've just written second generation i7 core Intel Core processors. So it used a clock frequency of 3.4 gigahertz, and it used 100 1060 million transistors, and the channel length kept on reducing. It has gone to around 32 nanometer. It was launched in the year 2011, and the technology used was CMOS. So what's the point of showing you all this is, see the number of transistors, they are very, very small. With the advent of integrated circuit technology, IC technology, it was possible to fit in so many transistors in a very, very small space. Okay, and so the world around us, the computing power in your computers, in your mobile devices, all are made up of MOSFETs. Obviously there are some devices which also uses BJT. Well, JFET very less it is used. Mostly it is used for experimental or laboratory purpose, but mostly around 98% of the industry semiconductor market uses MOSFET. Okay, and it has huge number of applications, and one of them we have seen them in, it is used in the processors. They are everywhere nowadays. Mobiles have become as powerful as computers. Okay, they all have MOSFETs working together inside. So it's very, very important to understand, and understand this MOSFET very, very clearly. Okay, and understand uh, its characteristics and its features, and then how this device can be used for so many applications, different variety of applications, right? So I hope this will be the motivation for studying. We have understood now why MOSFET is the most important semiconductor material for your subject. So focus on that, and all those things will be built up. So PN junction, BJT, JFET, and MOSFET will be your syllabus for your basic electronic circuitry. Okay, so that is all for this semiconductor fundamentals one. Actually, it was kind of making you understand, aware what kind of devices you will be studying in this subject, and importance of MOSFET, and few of the comparison of properties of silicon, gallium arsenide, and germanium as semiconductor materials. So that is all for today. Next time we'll start with some other semiconductor fundamental topics. So until then, have a good day and thank you.